I see us. Right. All right, you ready? Hello, hello, good afternoon, good evening. I am so excited to be here with everyone. As you know, I am Dr. Juanita Britt McDonald, founder, executive director of the Rediscover Me Women Initiative, Rediscover Me Facebook community, and the Mental Elevation Room. And today, guys, listen. As you know, we are in the month of October, and October is Domestic Violence Month. And so what I thought would be a great opportunity is to come in, bring someone in, and we kind of talk a lot about domestic violence, but not just speaking about domestic violence from the perspective of me sharing data, but to also give you a personal feel. And so joining me today is none other than Nancy Arazo, Washington State. So Nancy and I met through some a few other community members that are very prevalent here on Facebook. And so through our forms of collaboration, we found out that our paths kind of cross a little bit. And as I learned more about her, I was like, hey, I want you to come in and kind of talk, especially during the month of October, being that it's Domestic Violence Month. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of background on her. But before I do that, let me give you our mission. Rediscover Me Women Initiative's mission is to engage, educate, and inspire change for women and teen girls affected by abuse, trauma, and mental health due to domestic violence and sexual assault. And how do we do that? Those three pillars. Lost identity plus lost self-esteem equals lost purpose and direction. I want to say that again. Lost identity plus lost direction. Lord have mercy. Lost purpose and direction. So we want to be able to help you, in that place of mental stability, just like what I just had a little hiccup, that I'm going to blame that one on menopause, guys. So you can laugh with me, but it does happen. And I can begin talking and then we go all the way to the left. But, it's great to be able to be partnered with someone who does great work. That's one of the areas that I look for with individuals, to make certain that we are connecting with like-minded individuals who are doing great work in the community. And with Nancy, the biggest thing about her is she's bringing awareness and I want to make certain I'm saying this correctly, Nancy, and you can correct me, in the Hispanic and Latino and Latina community. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. And we want to make certain. So one of them, Latino, stands for the men, and Latina is for the women. And so bringing domestic violence awareness in the community, bringing the resources, and also sharing her own personal story. And tonight we get an opportunity to dive into what she does, how she do it, and also learn about her new book. Okay, so with that being said, let me share a little bit of information with her, and then we'll dive in and learn more about the great work that she do. Okay, so with that being said, Miss Arazo is a published author, and she's also a publisher. Wrote her memoirs, and me and that tongue gets tied over that one, titled Resilience, and shortly after, a story about resilience, which has gone to several countries recently. She recently released her third book, Resilient Women, God Restores Your Purpose. Resilient Women, God Restores Your Purpose. She is a podcast host of internationally heard show. Is that Her Resilience?
It's a Resilient Woman.
Okay, Resilient Woman. I knew Am I?
Yeah,
Me,
mujer.
you
Yes.
can mujer. You, hey guys, I took that much Spanish now.
That's good. You're doing good.
Resilient woman, yes. You know what? Just bear with me and laugh with me because we're gonna laugh through this, guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. She hosts seminars on domestic violence and is an advocate for women. She is worldwide speaker. She's a worldwide speaker and leads ministry for widows, single moms, and divorced women. She has an associate in theology.
Amen. Praise God.
Wow. Without further ado, welcome, Nancy. And please, thank you so much for bearing with me while I chop up. I chopped up your resume. But what we are going to talk about today, the biggest thing we're going to talk about is domestic violence. And so, but before we do that, tell me a little bit more that I might have left out about you, your community. What does that truly entail based on the work that you do?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me on here today. I'm so grateful, first of all, to God, for these just divine connections. Like you said, we met through a couple different people. My sister, April Metzler, my sister, Sherry Jones. They're just huge women of just influence. They're involved in so much. And it was, through them, through those friendships, through those connections that I'm able to meet, amazing women like yourself, that you're doing something incredible for your community, for women everywhere. And so I feel very blessed to be able to be here today to speak a little bit. And so just thank you so much for allowing me to come on your platform, to be able to meet some of the people that you work with, the people that are following you. So I'm just grateful for that. And so Dr. Juanita said, I am a published author. In December of 2019, I was able to write my first book. And so in this first book, I just wrote a little bit, about my own story. I am a single mom and I have 3 children. So I have my 20-year-old daughter. She's in college. She's about to get married. And then I have my 11-year-old son, Adriel, and then my 10-year-old daughter. And so, just doing the best that I can to raise them, with that good Christian foundation. And so through this first book, that's where all of this advocacy for the domestic violence arose from it. Because domestic violence is something that I personally, I went through it and I had been silent about it, because of the shame and the embarrassment of even, speaking on it. And so it was, through this first book that, God just, opened these doors for me. And now I'm able to actually speak on it and just get not just my story out there, but help, other women that maybe are still going through it or that haven't recovered fully from it. And so I do target a lot of my Hispanic community. We do have our seminars, which you mentioned. We do, at least 2 per year, where we focus, our theme is, domestic violence in the Christian home. And so the very first time that we did that workshop, I was just so amazed to see, ministers' wives and to see so many women that, have gone through it or that went through it, that were in the church. Because, my thought before was oh no, you don't see that really inside of the church. You'll see it, with people that don't know about God, with those people that are, living very different lives from us. But no, it is something that's, inside of our churches. And so that's been a topic that's just been really difficult to even talk about. But, God has just, placed that in my heart. And so that's what we're mostly working with for these past couple years. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that part, Nancy. Listen, I want to go back and talk more about you. You hit on two primary areas. There's multiple, but those are the two biggest parts of the silence and the shame. The silence and the shame of domestic violence. You know, I want to get a little bit more, or dive a little bit more about with you behind the scenes as to what took place, not necessarily, you know, all about the abuse, but you as the woman when the abuse took place in your life, and how did the silence and the shame of impact you or affect you, and what was going on that took your voice? Because basically, okay, let me back up where I'm going with this. Today I talked a lot about the degree of how one of the biggest areas that our power is taken from us as women and women of domestic violence is our voice. We lose our voice. So can you elaborate a little bit more about how shame and embarrassment took your voice?
Sure. So we know that, you know, when abuse is happening, that the only way that it gains power is by silencing it. As soon as we speak about it, it loses all power. And so that is what the person that is inflicting the abuse wants to make sure that they're able to do, you know, to their victim or to the person. They, first of all, you know, I was stripped of all my any self-confidence that I had. I remember thinking, you know, I was so naive because I kept thinking, you know, oh no, this situation is going to change. This situation, you know, if I behave, if I don't get him upset, if I do certain things, you know, I'm going to be able to change him. And so it was, you know, it's a power that they seem to, you know, inflict on the other person, where, you know, we're stripped of our self-esteem, where, you know, all of our security, we're placed in a place, we're put in a place of isolation. So the very first thing that happened, you know, to me personally was, you know, you cannot, you know, speak to your family, you can't have any friends. And so all of that, you know, is with the plan. And that's why, you know, even nowadays I try to talk, you know, to our youth that, you know, that controlling behavior, you know, is there, you know, with a purpose. You know, if somebody is trying to control even who your friends are, you know, who you speak with, that is a red flag, you know, immediately. And sometimes when we're, you know, younger, when it's our first relationship, we're like, you know, we might think, or what I thought, you know, was like, oh, maybe this is how a relationship is supposed to be. And so I remember just the worse that it got and the harder that it was, you know, feeling that shame, you know, feeling that embarrassment that I would say, you know, oh, nobody can find out that this is how I'm actually living. You know, it was something that I would never dream to talk about, or to even tell somebody like that I was going through it, because that person was able to have all of that control and power over me. So I felt like, no, you know, this is my shame to carry. This is, you know, my embarrassment. You know, I left a perfectly good Christian home, and so I deserve, you know, what's happening to me now. And so that's why it's so important that we break that silence. You know, like at the beginning, when I was saying that these things only gain power through like that silence, through, you know, when our voice is taken. But when we can, you know, have that breakthrough and understand that, no, you know, once we speak about it, we're going to be able to do something about it. So
Absolutely. Again, everyone that is taking part in this video, first of all, thank you very much for being here, for joining us as we discuss resilience, overcoming domestic violence. Nancy is out of Washington State, and she is presently a published author, a publisher. She advocates for domestic violence, has several different organizations and programs set up. I'm just doing a little quick recap for those that are joining us, so you'll know and understand what now what her advocacy stands for. She set up several different programs to where she can meet the need of the Hispanic and Latino and Latinx community, not Latinx, Latino and Latina community. And so to bring her in and to give her an opportunity to talk about this, one of the things that we look at, Nancy, and you kind of hit on it, is that power and control. Power and control is one of those areas that an abuser takes advantage of. And so the more that they can observe and find ways to take your power, and there's so many different forms of power and control. Power control could center around your finances. Your children can be used against you. Power and control can be monitoring where you are, time frames, what you're doing, what you're wearing. All of those and more are forms of power and control. We also can go into that place of a narcissism, gaslighting. There's so many factors, and if you've never heard of these words, these are forms of victimizations to for individuals that are in abusive domestic violence or intimate partner violence relationships. And so our goal today in bringing Nancy is to give her an opportunity to help us to understand from the perspective of a survivor first, from the perspective of an advocate in the work that she does, and why having resources such as her book and the resilience as a means of being able to connect on this personal level. And so she just hit on some very, I wanted to stop because she shared about power and control. When I asked that question pertaining to her silence, power and control is taking away. It's not adding to, it's what can I take away from my victims? And then how can I control them and what they do, how they move, how they think? All of those play a factor, right? Would you say, Nancy?
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so I want to go back and ask you, because you pointed out that, hey, I come from a Christian home. I come, and with parents. So would you say, did you come from a home that had abuse in it, or,
yeah, so I did not, I never saw, my father or my mother, neither of them be in that toxic, abusive relationship. So that's something that I really like to stress on, because a lot of times we think that only women that have seen that growing up, or men also, sorry, I don't want to, I do want to be
absolutely
inclusive,
no gender specific, right?
Yes. So sometimes we have that thought where we think, oh, because they grew up in that's how come they end up in that situation, but that's not true. I'm like a testimony to that, because I never saw that in my home. I saw, I had a good Christian home. Like I saw the great relationship that they had, and I still, ended up in that terrible situation. So, when I started to experience, the actual physical and the emotional abuse, I would think to myself, no, I deserve it, because I left that good Christian home that had good values, and this is my punishment for leaving like the ways of God, and this is my punishment for leaving the church, and this is my punishment, so I deserved it. So that was my thought, and I said, I'm just gonna have to live like this, for the rest of my life, because I was the one that left, that Christian home. And so it was very, difficult, for my parents. Like my mother, like she never really knew, how how bad of a situation I was in, because I never would say anything. But, you know, they did get to the point where they would see certain things, you know, like on my body, on my face, because they lived like 15 minutes away, but I was not, you know, allowed to go see them. I wasn't able to go talk to them, but it would still get back to them. Like some of the situation that I was in, and again, I never spoke to them about it. I would never, you know, I wouldn't like call or go to them and tell them, oh, this is happening. So my situation, it's really, you know, sad, because something happened at my job place. So my boss ended up calling my parents, you know, and saying, hey, you know, can she come back home? She's in a really bad situation. And so that, and again, when I went back home, I still did not ever say everything that I went through or anything like that. They were just so glad that I had gone back to them and that I was safe. So
good for you. Absolutely. And I'm going to ask this. Do you think because, and you have shared, hey, I thought this was my punishment, I thought this is why. Do you think that was also part of the buildup to the shame?
yes, definitely. Because I thought it wasn't so much like that I just built that thinking of on my own, but he also would you know, say certain things and help build that up like in my own mind. So that it definitely was a factor.
Okay, gaslighting. Absolutely. Listen, so thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for sharing and allowing us to understand it from the place of a survivor. The so let's kind of shift gears a little bit, you know, and because you pointed out about the faith-based community, as I, you know, I'm excited because you share how you have went back into the faith-based community, you bringing resources into those communities, and how you are navigating for survivors that are behind those doors to have access. Is one of the areas that I have worked diligently, and until my clientele became so full that I couldn't. But it's one of those areas that I work diligently to try to crack that door, to get you know, ministers and pastors to understand the need to have resources, because the church is the first hospital survivors go to, right? Yes. And even, and I'll say that, I'll put this out and say, even if a person is not, you know, wasn't brought up in that environment, sometimes we all get to a place to where we have ran out of our resources, and it might be, you know, I need, you know, if I go to this building, this church, you know, I've tried everything else and my life hasn't gotten any better, you know, maybe if I go here. So, you know, from what you have learned, and understanding, you know, I'm not talking about the pastors and the parishioners. I first want to talk about getting through the door in the faith-based community, in order to get those that are in authority, and I'm sorry, I'm speaking from a business perspective, but pastors, ministers, the women's department, you know, getting them to understand the need to have domestic violence programs and resources available in the church. And how do we do that?
Amen. So like for me personally, it was you know, through me telling my story. So when my book came out, you know, December 2019, you know, a lot of my sisters, you know, in different churches, just throughout the states, you know, once they read that story, because, you know, I just want to let you guys know, I never spoke about the domestic violence. I was silent for 20 years. So I never spoke about it. It wasn't until I wrote it in the book I wrote, some details. I couldn't go completely into it because, I have children, they're going to read it. Like my oldest daughter read it, everything. So I had to be careful, but I did share a lot. And so by them reading like the story, then they identified something in their own lives. And I had so many people reaching out to me, telling me, sister, I went through something like this. Oh, I went through this, but, I was in church, nobody helped me. And so I left the church. So that was my biggest thing. Like that was, December 2019, at the beginning of 2020, I just had, those are the messages that would come to me. I would get, messages on Facebook, hey, can I talk to you? And then they would just open up and tell me, hey, I went through this. I didn't have help. I was told, certain things by different church members. And so that's when something just sparked inside of me that said, no, I need to speak about this topic. Because even if there's so many that were lost because they left the church, they didn't get the help or the support, a few of them did come back to the church. And so I said, no, this is a topic that we need to talk about. It's very uncomfortable, but when God is in the midst of it and he's the one guiding you, we know that God ordains our steps. He's the one that's placed like the right people in my path. And I've been able to do these workshops where it's not just me. I have a pastor that I do a lot of work with. He was a pastor, being a male, he went through the domestic violence. And so it helped when we started doing these workshops, because we would tell everybody, if you want to join, for any reason, this is a private Zoom. And so we could hear, what the need was. Some people want to connect just so that they're able to help others, just so that they know the signs. And others actually want the resources. They want to start certain things in their own communities, in their own churches. And so, like I said, for me, it was, I was able to get my foot in the door. I was able to get in this just by telling my own story, because people were able to identify and to say, okay, she survived it, being in the church and all of that. So that's what's helped me, personally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And I asked this question, because I know, number one, that was where I started when I began my advocacy in a faith-based community, talking with the associations and all. But then also, as not a lot of people in my church knew what I did, and eventually they did find out what I did, several of them. And what would happen as I would be leaving church, someone would grab my hand and you would get this look, and they would say I was abused. And you can, and we started out talking about voice, because the very first thing happened is that person lose their voice, the outside of their brain. And we're not going to go there because that's a lot of training and teaching. But that voice position is another power deactivator that is taken from survivors. And so yes, we definitely want to look at how do we get through that door. And I will say, anybody out there that is watching this video, if you have any ideas, resources, let me know. Any way that we can reach other survivors and women and bring resources, we want to be able to do that.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And Sherry Jones shared, we definitely need to talk about it. We can brush things under the carpeting. We can't brush anything up under the carpet anymore. Thank you for the courage and your yes to the Lord. Amen. Thank you, Sherry. Absolutely. So now let's go in and talk about the parishioner, the pastor's wives. And you stated, hey, I was shocked to find out the volume of women you know, that are being abused. Tell me a little bit more about that when, you know, and how did you connect with them
Yeah,
in their
so like I said, we always just you know, make that public invitation. We say, you know, anybody that wants to join, please feel free to join. And so it was like at our very first one, I believe in 2020 is when we started, or 2021. So the very first one, you know, we had sisters, you know, that said, you know, I was going through, you know, like the physical abuse, you know, I would talk to, you know, or my husband was up there preaching, you know, my husband was doing the instruments, like my husband was up there, you know, as a leader. And, you know, they would go to like the church leaders, like to try to get that help. And, you know, they weren't provided that. I had one sister, she shared her testimony, and this sister, she actually did it on our on my podcast. So I'm able to share it because she shared it, you know, publicly. But she says that, you know, she had to provide lots of proof, you know, like she went to the hospital several times. He broke, you know, you know, body parts of her. And so she had to provide, you know, actual paperwork to say, this is why I need to divorce this man. And so, and then that's like when the church granted like the permission, like for them to get divorced. And so all of that was just shocking to me because, you know, like you said, like the church is that hospital, is that safe place where people go, you know, once they've been, you know, hurt by the world, once they've been just devastated, you know, they come to the church seeking that refuge and that help and that support. And it's like a hospital, you know, we're there like to mend and to help them, you know, through the word of God, through scripture, through prayer, and through actual resource, like through actual help. And so just listening that there were so many women that weren't given that help, you know, that weren't provided that actual, you know, where they could say, no, you know, you're being physically like hurt, you know, you need to do something legally, you know, we can help you. And I understand, you know, back in the day, like it was a little different. Nowadays we are seeing more of like of a different mindset. And so some places just weren't or aren't prepared like for these kind of situations. And so that's why, you know, I'm hoping like to be that pioneer, or at least, you know, like in my community, you know, started off where we can at least speak about it, you know, we can at least talk about it. We can get ideas, we can find, you know, help find solutions like to these issues that are, you know, very, you know, sensitive. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing from that perspective. I think the thing that that I'm listening to, you know, when I hear stories such as this, you know, some of them, they make you want to cringe. But I've heard so many, so you know, it does not, a lot of things doesn't even surprise me. You know, to hear the volume of what that young lady had to go through just to get her divorce. You know, even, you know, and there's another individual, you know, from my perspective, that she went through something that had her in a place to where her church, she was dating a member of her church. So they weren't married, they were dating. And she doesn't know. So I'm not kind of scaling over it. I'm trying to make certain I tell the story in a way, because there's some parts I can't tell. But in a sense, she was raped, but she doesn't know. And so to tell you how that actually worked is very technical. And so for this particular individual, she remembered going to sleep, and she remembered waking up, but the way she woke up, she knew something wasn't right, and something was wrong with her body. And so she went to the hospital, and yes, she discovered, that, something had happened to her, that she was raped. And so she went to her pastor, and their solution to the issue, because the gentleman worked in the church, was for both of them to be, for him to be on one side of the room and she to be on the other, and never to be together. And so it's things such as these, why I feel like it's very important for us to bring awareness, for us to be able to talk to women, to help them to find their voice, especially if they have lost their voice. Today, I'm just now coming back, and that's why I have my hat on, guys, from being outside, coming back in, and we're from a rally, and helping individuals to hush no more. And that's an organization here in Columbia, local organization, that's ran by my mentor, Vanessa Guyton. And so that rally centered on helping individuals to know that you have a right to tell it. If something happened to you, you have a right to tell it. But the thing that I want to share with you, Nancy, and this is another form of shift, is absolutely, Sherry, is that we have got to also start educating survivors on what each state's guidelines are. Now, we can't carry every state. So even though I'm saying it, I'm saying you are in Washington State, educating survivors on what are those guidelines in Washington State. I'm here in South Carolina. What are we looking at here in South Carolina, and other advocates in other states? Because this is the thing, and amazingly, I love our solicitor here in South Carolina. I get an opportunity, anytime I get an opportunity to talk to him, I kind of pick his brain. And so one of the things, just like when you describe the young lady having to prove, number one, she shouldn't have had to prove to the church. I'm going to say that. She shouldn't have had to prove to the church just to get her divorce. But there's in South Carolina, for those of you who are listening and may not know this, in South Carolina, you can get a divorce based on emotional and verbal abuse. Emotional and verbal abuse. The thing about it is, as we already know, emotional and verbal abuse is a little bit hard to prove. But if you have a journal, if you don't, go buy you a journal, document everything. That's part of your proof. Recordings, pictures, anything that you can keep that will show documentation, and over a span, you're able to submit that in court, and it will be able to help you. As I talked with our solicitor here in South Carolina, I had an opportunity to, and we have so many different organizations. We have advocates all over the place. But what I like about him is that he take time out to listen to us, and then to hear what we may have that they don't have, and then how we can actually merge those things together. And then not just from that perspective, but I get to understand more about what does that law look like. So when I come back into my community, I can educate others so they'll know what to look for, how to go about things. Because the thing of it is, so we first started out, and this is just the educational part, ladies and gentlemen. We started out talking about silence. If a victim does not speak up, and if the victim is not able to articulate where you were attacked, what happened, and how, and your voice is taken from you, the solicitors cannot support you. They need vital information. The police officers need your vital information. So all the way across the board, whether you're in with Nancy and where she's located at, in any other state, if a victim takes a police report, it is really important for you to make certain that that police report have the exact information verbatim. Sometimes we come across individuals who don't want to do all that paperwork. You have a right to your police report. Get it verified, make certain that your information is accurate. And then trust and believe that there are also advocates that will go and walk with you through all the things that you're going through. So I wanted to make that plug. I don't want to take too much away from Nancy, but I believe in educating us, and I believe in making certain that when we walk out that door, when you walk out that door, that you are guarded with information. And so as we move forward, I want to give Nancy an opportunity to tell us more about her book. And because I don't want to forget, I don't want to leave out that plug, okay? Don't want to leave out that plug. I want her to share with us more about her book, more about her platform, and how you can connect with her. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Right now that you were giving that very just important information. So that is what we do at our workshops. We share, and because we do have people, from different states, we're not able to do state by state like you just explained, but we do tell them, you have rights even within the church. We tell them within the church, these are your rights. It doesn't matter what church you attend to, what a denomination you are, what you believe. If you're assisting a church, these are your rights within that church. And then we tell them, these are your rights, within like what the law is saying. And then we explain that, of course, that each state is different. So that is something that we like to cover in each one of our workshops. So thank you so much for doing that as well. And so, yes, I am very just thankful to God, for allowing me to become a published author. Like I said, my first book, Resilience, is my memoir where I actually speak about like the domestic violence. I speak about a train accident that I was in. I grew up in Louisiana, so I was about like 3 years old. Our vehicle stopped on the railroad track. The train hit our car, took us for several miles. And in this accident, all of us suffered, injuries, very drastic injuries. And so, my parents, they weren't, Christian at the time, but we, like my sister, all the glass from the car, it just ripped her open. She was never going to be able to walk. She was never going to be able to have children, and God, did the miracle in her life. And so that is what really sparked like the book for me, because I had that vision that one day it's going to be like a Christian movie, so I started off the book talking about that accident. And then, as I wrote, I wrote out, some of the things that I went through. And like I said, right away, like the book came out, right away in January, I had people calling me up. Oh, Nancy, I want to do this. I want to do this project. Let's do this. And I had several women just reach out to me because of the domestic violence part. And so at the very first book interview that I had, it was just amazing, how God works, when God is in the midst of it, when he is the one guiding you. From that interview, that night, I received, calls. Oh, Nancy, we want to invite you, so I've spoken like in different countries, all over like the United States, not just in Spanish, in English as well. And so that writing, was just inside of me. So the second book, was just, I wanted to share about more like of a Hispanic, like our culture or like what we go through. So my second book, it's called A Story About Resilience. And the second book is focused more on what we suffer, coming from different countries to the United States. And so I spoke about my mother's story. She was 19 years old and she brought me and my sister over here, and we had to, because I was born in Guatemala. So we had to cross all of Mexico, to come into the United States. And, we go and we move into Louisiana, and then we have that accident right away. And so I don't just tell her story, I tell my dad's story. He was also, I think, also 1920, and he came over here without a dime in his pocket. And so I wanted to tell all of these different stories. It's about 6 different stories of different people, different countries, everything that they suffered to get here. Because sometimes, we don't understand, we see people, fleeing their countries, and people are just coming over here, but we don't understand why they would risk their life, why they're risking their life of their kids, to get over here. And so that second book is the one that just, like I said, exploded. It went to it's gone out to 15 different countries. And then this third book that just came out this month is Resilient Woman, God Restores Your Purpose. And on that one, I wanted it to be, completely different. I did it more of a self-help book, where I would ask certain questions. I have you guys, I have a section for writing out. I have a section that gives you help on how to do certain prayers. If you need that restoration in your life, because we know that, all of us were made perfectly, in God's image, but we go through certain things in life, and the enemy, does certain things to us. And then we think that there can't be that restoration in our life, but, we serve a God of restoration. And so I've been praying, that this third book also be just a big success, like the first 2 have. And so I haven't received any of the copies yet. I ordered them, but we all know, as authors, that it takes a while to get that first batch in. But it is on sale. All 3 of them are on Amazon. And then I also have it on my personal website, which is neraso.com. And so all 3 books are on there. If you guys haven't been able to read them, you can go on there and take a look. Thank you.
Okay, guys, make certain that you go on Amazon and check out Nancy, and her name is spelled Nincy Arazo, Erazo, Nancy Arazo, and her book is Resilient Woman. I think that's going to be amazing. What is it, you want to leave with everyone? If you could share one thing with women that are on here in this journey called life that we're all going through, what would it that you would like to share?
Amen. Thank you. I would just like to say that it doesn't matter, what you've had to go through in life. If, one of my favorite verses, it's Psalms 138, where it says, the Lord will fulfill his purpose in me. And so I remember that when I finally got, the courage, and I was able to leave that domestic violence situation, that's a verse that I would have, on my computer. I would have it on the wall, because I understood that it didn't matter, what, all the physical pain, all the emotional pain, everything that I went through, God had allowed it, he permitted it, but, I was still alive. I am still alive because God has a purpose. And so that is my message that I always like to leave and to say to women, you have a purpose. If you are alive today, if God spared your life, so much sickness, so much, so many things that you might have gone through, you have a purpose, and God's not finished with you yet. And so that's the message that I would like to leave.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Last but not least, how can everyone connect with you? How can they follow you?
And then, so I am very socially active. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. And then I do have a podcast. That one is only in Spanish. We did have our 50th episode that I was able to do an interview in English. So that was really nice, because then I could have all my English speaking people tune in. But I also have my podcast. It's Resilient Women, which is on all the platforms as well, Spotify, Apple, anywhere that you listen to. But if you just, put in my name, Nancy Erazo, and thank you for spelling that out, you'll be able to find me. I'm always available, for any, anything that's needed, that's what we're here for. We're here to support each other. And so I'm just grateful once again that I was able to be on here with you. So
it's such a pleasure to have you here with the Rediscover Me community, allowing those that we are connected with to connect with you. I just believe in making certain that we connect with amazing individuals. You never know what is going on, how someone else can support what you're doing, who may see this video and be inspired or can use what the services that you provide. And the biggest thing that I found, and I knew I wanted us to dive more deeper in, was seeing one another, not culturally, but gender. We're women. No matter what, we all go through the same thing. We all love our family, and we're all out here trying to have a good life. And so when we come together, it's something amazing, Nancy, about women. When we come together, we can just about move some mountains. When we pull our resources together, and what better way to do it than for others to see you and I coming together and just brainstorming and looking at how do we impact others and show them what this thing called life really looks like, and how we do it together in sisterhood. I think that's amazing.
Yes, it definitely is.
Awesome. Well, everyone that's here, I've seen some names. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for commenting in the chat. For those that are coming in and watching the replay, be sure to share how this message is impacting you. If you are a survivor and you need support, be sure to reach out to Rediscover Me Women Initiative, through Messenger, through Facebook community. We will be more than happy to support you, get you some resources, and provide and help that you may need. The other thing, information. We want to be able to impact you with information. In this short length of time, we did not hit everything, and if you notice, we were trying to skim over a lot of areas, but just to try to make the conversation very relevant. But if there's an area that we may not have connected with you over, be sure to let us know. Myself or Nancy, let us know, and how we can support you and how we can provide, get resources to you. So those are the biggest thing. And also remember, if you do not know and understand some of the terminologies that we share, look them up, Google them. They're Googleable. I love playing with that word with my grands. But put the word in, power and control. You're going to come up with the power and control wheel. Research, shaming, gaslighting, narcissism. Look those words up. They're very important. You'll begin to learn a whole lot about yourself. And then another thing, before we close out, there is I know one I talked with someone once who shared with me she didn't understand if she was being emotionally abused. And please understand, when I say this, I use the word emotionally abused very loosely, because what could be abuse to you may not be abuse to me. Okay. So understand, you have to know what takes away from who you are as a woman, and what devalues you. Okay. If it devalues you and make you feel less than, and if it takes away your self-esteem, then that's forms of emotional abuse. Verbal abuse, we know what that is. Emotional abuse is total opposite. Okay. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining myself and Nancy. During this time, we are in the month of October. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And what we have is what we're doing is bringing awareness and talking more and more about what that looks like, and how individuals are impacted. And we want to make certain that the information that we bring is very relevant and that you can actually apply it to whatever you are up against, and not just whatever. If you may not be involved in an abusive relationship, but you may know someone else that in your path. So we want to gear you up with all of this information so you can communicate. And even if you don't know what to say, listen. If you can't advise, just listen, and be with that partner, be with that person until we can get them to safety and do that soft pass. So with that being said, have an amazing afternoon, or evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And be sure to connect with us for events that are coming up. On Saturday here in Columbia, we have the Hush No More Domestic Violence Walk. That is on Eventbrite. Please look it up and take part in it. On the 19th, the domestic Hush No More will also be having their breakfast for the homeless, domestic violence survivors. We're going to do a butterfly release there. So you might see me, you might be like, well, you're rediscovering me. Yeah, I am rediscovering me. But guess what? A victim doesn't have a title. So you'll see me interchanging, and now that I'm learning more about Nancy, if I know Nancy is doing something, I'm gonna tell you about Nancy and all of her events too. So I'm not limited into domestic violence or abuse or mental desperations, because I fall into all of those categories. And if somebody is hurting, they don't care about a title, they just want help. And so I invite you to come out. I invite you to support. I invite you to bring as much awareness as possible. So with that being said, have an amazing evening. Be positive. Be respectful, and remember, above all things, our Heavenly Father loves you, but so do I. Good night, everyone.
Bye.